Hello, everyone. Good evening. We'll give it a couple of minutes. I see a lot of people are logging in.
Hi, Laura.
Hello.
Did you see that, Olympia?
Yes. All right, I think we have slowed down, so we can get started whenever you're ready, Dr. Lucero.
And I just want to confirm we have back-to-back sessions. This is our student session.
That is correct.
Great, thank you. So we do want to thank our students for joining us today. We just had the opportunity to talk to staff, and then we have following sessions with families for the next couple hours. So I do want to go ahead and get started because these are booked back to back. Thank you so much for taking your time this afternoon. I do want to start as I start every listening session, and we've had an opportunity to have listening sessions with all of our elementary school communities and also our middle school communities, but this is our first official one for students. The middle school students were encouraged to join with their families, as are the elementary students, but we thought that it was really important for us to hear directly from our high school students. So I'm looking forward to your feedback and comments. I did want to kind of give you a little bit of an update related to the vaccination for our staff. We're really excited that our elementary staff was able to be vaccinated last weekend. They had the one shot Johnson & Johnson, which is also what will be given to our secondary teachers, our middle school and high school teachers and staff, the entire staff. This weekend, we do know that some of our staff members had an adverse effect to the Johnson & Johnson, very similar to what we've seen in the second dose of the other two vaccinations. So in talking with Stanford Hospital, we have decided to host a remote learning day for all students on Monday. So at the middle and high school level, I have to be careful because elementary doesn't have one. At the middle and high school level, so that if anyone has any issues, that they will have that time to recover. So I did want to take a few minutes. It seemed helpful also for people to think, hear our thinking when we work with our health departments about why is this a good time to think about returning to school, for more students to return to school, increase the density in our schools. And one of the reasons that we talked about with our health director and our medical advisor, who has really been working with us throughout this COVID time to give us guidance in what we should do and which educational model we should remain in. One of the things they've noticed over the last several weeks is that there's been a decrease in our data, particularly related to positivity rates, hospitalization, and any sort of deaths. And so in looking at all of this information, they started to think about, is this the time that we might be able to return more students to school? If you ever want to kind of understand where we get this data from, Mayor Martin hosts a meeting every Tuesday at 6 o'clock. This is a good opportunity for you to see our data on a weekly basis. And it may be a good thing for you to watch with your parents so that you have a clear understanding of how we look at the data to make a lot of decisions here in Stanford Public Schools. The other thing that we talk with our health professionals about is that the health department that oversees the entire state, we call it DPH, the Department of Health. And they have looked at school districts across the state. And what they have determined is that whether a school is in a hybrid model or if they've returned to school all for 5 days or 4 days a week with more in-person students, that there is very little transmission that they have found across the state in these school districts. And so that is another reason why they thought that this is a good time for school districts, not just Stanford Public Schools, but school districts across the state and I will say across the country to continue to think about returning more students to school. We do have at this point less of a positivity rate among not only our community, but in our schools. Again, another reason that we are thinking about returning to school. Along with the teachers and the staff, vaccinations are being provided. Now we're at 55 and above are eligible to be vaccinated. So the more people who are eligible for vaccination and receive the vaccination, the less positivity rate we're going to see. So that is another reason at this time that it made sense to start thinking about returning more students to school. And the last area that Dr. Yoon shared with me as really one of the major factors is that we have been in school in a hybrid model, and you students and the staff have done an amazing job of paying attention to all of our mitigating strategies. The first and foremost is wearing your mask properly. You all have done a really good job. Not perfect. No one's perfect at wearing a mask, but you all have done a really, really good job with it. And again, when you put in place your mitigation strategies and you're able to follow them, that's another reason, because we look at a group of mitigation strategies, not just one mitigation strategy that is going to be helpful with us making sure that we all stay safe. So the other thing that you might want to know is that we will continue to do contact tracing. We're really appreciative of our city, who has increased the amount of support that we will have for contact tracing. So that will be very helpful if someone does test positive, to be able to quickly identify them and anyone they were in contact with and quarantine or isolate those individuals. The last thing I think it would be important for you to know is the amount of COVID testing we have available here in Stanford. I think that all of us remember several months ago, it was very difficult to get a COVID test. Now you can get a COVID test in your student-based health center. You can get it in several locations around Stanford, and there are hardly any lines. And your test results are coming back quicker, anywhere from 24 to 36 hours. And so again, these are things that we are making sure we have in place so that we can really make sure that if someone does not feel well, they quickly are able to go someplace and determine whether or not they have tested positive. So for all of those reasons, we wanted to kind of give you, these are sort of the questions that people have been asking as we have done these listening sessions and even before the listening sessions. So we thought it would be good to start with some that may have answered some of your questions. We do have a frequently asked questions on our website. So, and that information, as we continue to communicate with families, will be provided to you also. I am going to, at this time, turn it over to Ray Menka, who is the principal at Stanford High. He may be some of your principals, one of your principals, And he is going to go over an idea we have for a plan for high schools. No plan has been decided on at the high school level. We know we've announced the plan for our elementary students and our middle school students, but the high schools are very complicated and health and safety will always come first. So we have been working with our high school administrators to try to develop a plan. And we have one that really looks like it may have may be appropriate for us, but we are going to, I'll turn it over to Mr. Menka at this time to share with you some of our ideas.
Thank you, Dr. Lucero, and good evening, everyone. As Dr. Lucero just mentioned, we certainly do have many challenges as do the elementary and the middle schools. But first and foremost, we're talking about the safety and the well-being of our students and our staff. And with that, the news of the vaccine for our staff is welcome. And obviously, as we look to transition about 1,400 students back to Stanford High School, the first thing that we need to be able to make sure that we do is when we are in school, that we would have some place to sit down and be able to eat. So that became a real challenge, and we started to get creative, and we've met and had some wonderful brainstorming sessions. And what looks to be a viable opportunity or option right now is a daily early release model. Currently, we've got class periods that are roughly 48 minutes, and we would probably modify that down to a 40-minute to 43-minute, again, yet to be ironed out or determined yet, but 40-minute periods with a grab and go lunch. So that means that we'd be able to invite back our 1,400 students to Stanford High School with their masks, of course, with some staggered releases from classes, with staggered releases at the end of the day to get to our buses or walk home. We would be using new and modified desk barriers that would be affixed to your bandit style or one-arm style desks. And for the students who would require additional resources or support, those students would be able to stay for an actual lunch in the cafeteria. We'd still be 6 foot apart. And then we'd be dispatched to different rooms for academic support or social emotional help and well-being. And really these are some of the opportunities that would allow for us to be able to get back in school and get around the challenges of worrying about the seats for all of us to be able to eat and remain distanced with so many more students at the secondary level. I think I covered most of the most salient points, Dr. Lucero.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And now it's time for us to hear from our students. You can share any thoughts that you have about what Mr. Menka just shared with you, or any other thoughts that you have about returning to school 5 days a week. One of the things we heard in an earlier session is the possibility of having a survey so that more people will have an opportunity to share some ideas with us. That is an example of a suggestion that was that you might have. So we're ready to listen. So I'm going to turn it over now to Mrs. Della Flora, who is going to be our host this evening.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Lucero, and hello to all the students who are out there joining us today on the webinar. I'm Olympia Della Flora. I'm one of the associate superintendents, and just so you can also see who's on the screen, you know Mr. Ray Menka, he's the principal at Stanford High School. Dr. Laura Green is our coordinator at our Anchor program. You obviously know our superintendent, Dr. Tamu Lucero. Amy Beldotti is on. She's my colleague and other associate superintendent for teaching and learning, and Sharon Vito, who's our public affairs officer. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew everyone who's on the call, that you can see our faces. How we will run the listening session tonight is you'll see there on the screen. If you have questions that you'd like to type in, you can use the Q&A feature, and we will be asking those questions throughout the listening session. Or if you actually would like to speak, you can use the raise hand function, and we would just ask that you limit your time to 2 minutes. So if there are others that would like to share, they will have that opportunity to do so. And if you missed something, we are recording all of our sessions and we will put those on the website. So if you have a suggestion, a question, a comment, we will start taking those now. And it looks like we already have some questions in the Q&A, so I'll go ahead and start there. First question, how will students be 6 feet apart and buses, hallways and classrooms?
So we won't be 6 feet apart. We will be closer to 3 feet apart, but we use a suite or group of mitigation strategies. So one of the strategies that we're adding is to make sure that everyone has access to barriers when seated. The buses are going to be complicated for us, and they were before, and we continue to work with our transportation department to make sure that we are able to shift around students on buses, onto different buses, so they're less crowded. We also are really encouraging families who are able to, and then some of you who are able to drive, to provide your own transportation to school, so we can leave our buses for students who really need that transportation in order to get to school. So we are going down to 3 to 6 feet, not 6 feet. And that was in collaboration with our health department and guidance that we've been given from the CDC and DPH.
Thank you, Dr. Lucero. Here's another question that's in the Q&A. If there's an early or a staggered dismissal model, how will that work with sports?
I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Manka.
Sure. So, and I could have mentioned this and should have mentioned this previously. So any of our student athletes that would need to stay would be invited to eat lunch actually in the cafeteria or designated locations. They would then have a monitored place to be able to do their work, recover credits that they need through in the event that they need it with Edgenuity. I think both schools have an AthLife type program. We have Nightlife at Stanford High School, Purple Pact, I think, at West Hill. And those options would be available for those student athletes after school. So that would be until about 2:05. When school would typically, be released, and then we'd be able to get on our buses or prepare for practice and then go to our games. So the planning would take place for those student athletes.
Thank you, Mr. Manka. Here's another question, and then I'm going to go to the people who have their hand raised. So I'm going to be moving you over as panelists. Here's another question. When will the students in DTLA have a chance to switch to the new model if they want to?
So in elementary and middle school, we ask everyone when we first enter back in that we are able to transition back in our hybrid students, and then we would look at an option for our DTLA students. So that is the same model that we will use. So that we're able to get the hybrid students in and then make a decision on what we can do for DTLA. But please know that as we're developing this plan, we are considering what our options would be if there are DTLA kids who would like to return to school also.
Thank you, Dr. Lucero. All right, if Ashwarya, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I know how hard everybody has been working to make reopening happen. And for one thing, we're all us students, we're all super grateful for all of it. You all work so hard and it's amazing. But with that, we do have a lot of concerns. I know in our individual clubs at schools, we've run things where we've asked the students how they feel about the possibility of reopening. And honestly, all I'm hearing is anxiety from a lot of students and fear about it. But that's also because we don't really know what's happening, as do you guys. Totally understandable. But with that, a lot of students feel like they weren't consulted at all. So I know, Dr. Lucero, you said a survey earlier to be sent out. And honestly, from our perspective, that would be a great idea, just so people feel like they're heard in the sense of in the decision-making process. So I think that would be a good idea to get more people's input in, because I know not everybody can make this session. One question I do have is, as of right now, when people log in distance on their supposed in-person days, they're still marked absent. And I know in elementary schools, if one person has COVID in a class, the entire class has to stay home. And it's not really feasible for a lot of parents to drop their jobs and stay home with their kids for 2 weeks at that point. So it would most probably fall on the high school siblings. Would those kids still be marked absent if they have to stay home with a COVID, not a COVID sibling, but somebody who's possibly been exposed?
So I would ask you to work with either your building principal or your guidance counselor to make those decisions. I don't know that we can speak generally about that because I don't know if it's a yes or no answer. So that would be what I would encourage you to do. And I am asking for those of you who have ideas about survey questions, there is going to be an email that comes up at the end of of our broadcast. Will you please go ahead and put some of those questions in, because often people say, make a survey. And then I make a survey and they say, I don't like your questions. So to avoid that, I would appreciate any help. And I think we met before via Zoom. Have we met before?
Probably. I was also on the elementary school Zoom, but that was
Okay.
for my brother. So yeah, this
Okay.
is more so for like people our age.
No,
One more
I
thing.
appreciate it.
Another thing, is water available to students at school, like water bottles?
So I know we're putting in water systems, but they're not in at all of the buildings. So again, that's a good question at your building level. They might be able to answer that question. I know a lot, but not everything about each of the schools.
If I can chime in, I see
Oh,
progress at Stanford High School. I know that there are some that are in the progress of getting the no-touch fill station. And we also, I saw one of the other questions before about would water be available. We have talked with Dawn McGinn and also with our local school-based staff about setting up stations for snacks, for fruit, and for water, for grab and go. So during the day, we'd be able to have that available. So it'd just be convenient as you're walking or transitioning from class to class.
Okay, thank you so much. And one last thing about the proposed plan that Mr. Manka just talked about with the early release. One thing is, I know AP testing is coming up, and especially with the hybrid model, a lot of people don't feel like they've gotten as equal of an education in AP classrooms as they would have in previous years. So how would making the days like cut in half and also decreasing class like time when we all go back fully in person, how would that help with AP testing? Like how can that still give people the same education that they normally would get?
So I think, we're in the middle of a pandemic
Mhm.
and nothing's going to be ideal. So we are looking at all different types of options because there are different levels of what we are attempting to do. And one of the things that we've heard from a lot of people is, boy, it would just be nice to be in school 5 days a week. And
100%.
and we have to make choices. These aren't easy choices and not something that we plan to do. Is that, we're coming up on a year since we've all been in school together. So they are hard choices that we have to make, and one is not better than the other. And one is going to make one thing that is going to make it better for some is maybe going to make it worse for others. So we're just going to do the very best we can. And I think that's what people have to understand about doing a survey also, is that everyone's not going to be happy with the results of the survey. So just a lot to think about.
Yep. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for letting me speak. Really appreciate it. And I will definitely put in survey questions, and I will encourage a lot of other people to do the same.
Thank you so much.
you.
I really appreciate it.
All right, next to speak will be Vita, and after Vita, we will have Brianna. So Vita, do you want to go ahead and speak now?
Hi, sorry. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much for holding this meeting, because I've been, for Westward, obviously, I've been asking a lot of people around, staff, students, families, to just see what everyone's been thinking. So I wanted to share some of a mixture of concerns from everyone. Going back to the survey though, I did want to mention at West Hill, we did have this huge survey go out to every student. So I don't know if there's a way for me to send it to you or not.
That'd be great. Yes. Send it to the superintendent's email.
Yeah.
I would appreciate seeing it.
Okay, yeah, I my English teacher made it pretty much, but then it ended up going to everyone. So I can talk to her and see if she can send it to you. Because I know it had a lot of information.
That's great.
So a lot of people responded. But I guess just from looking about that, one of my biggest concerns just from talking to other classmates is that there's just been a lot of anxiety going around already with constantly switching schedules without really knowing what's going on. and obviously like it's no one's fault when we have to have a remote day all of a sudden or stuff like that, like we understand. But I just think this like all of a sudden switching to 100% in-person learning is causing a lot more anxiety. And I think the biggest part of that is communication. A lot of us don't really know what's going on, which is why I wanted to thank you for holding this meeting because it's really helpful. And then also, I guess this kind of goes into communication. We stopped getting calls about when there have been cases at West Hill. And so no one really knows how many cases there have been or like what contact tracing has been done or anything like that. And that does make me feel like more uncomfortable. And I wanted to go back to the whole 3 feet apart. I was just wondering like how that follows like the CDC guidelines and stuff like that.
Yeah. So a couple of things. The contact tracing, your building principal once a week should send out a communication to families. And in that communication, one of the requirements is that they show how many COVID tests were that week. So you said West Hill, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So Mr. Rinaldi, if you go back and look at the communication that goes to your families every week, that should have that information in it. And the second thing that you asked, you said something else just recently. I just forgot.
Yeah, it was just about the
the 3 feet
apart and not 6
Sorry.
feet apart because I was trying to find like
Right.
the
So
guide-
they say to the greatest extent possible. So it's the language that they use in the CDC. And so we've been working with our local health department and Department of Health in the state. And what they talk about is that you just don't have one strategy that you use. We use a suite of strategies. So some of them is hand sanitizing. We're going to have access to barriers if people would like barriers. So you want to, if you're going to reduce in one place, you want to increase in another place. So our barriers would help with that piece of it.
Okay, and then I had another comment. So I also found something on the New York Times about, it was pretty much based on CDC guidelines. They had a map of America and which counties should reopen.
I've been sent that article about 70 times, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. I can see, yeah.
So I just noticed that like the counties in Connecticut weren't highlighted for 100% in person.
Yeah.
It was for like elementary schools, I believe, which I obviously understand why elementary schools need to reopen because that's
right. And actually, it's anything below 50. It's between 10 and 50 cases per 100,000. Stanford is currently at 32.
Okay, so it's
Okay.
gone, I guess, since I've
Yes.
seen it.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Brianna.
Hi, okay. I have a few things. First of all, it considers the schools. I know I go to West Hill. I don't know if this is at the other high schools, but I know that there are a lot of people that come in sick. People have still been partying and stuff like that. They come in the day after and then disappear. So it's obvious something went on. Also that a lot of my classes I know one of my classes is already at max capacity with the 6 feet and everything. So adding more to that doesn't really feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
With the cafeterias, it's concerning about being less than 6 feet away from each other if we're still keeping them the same and adding more desks in there. Even if we have barriers, if people turn and talk to their friends, that really kind of defeats the point of having barriers, especially if they're not wearing masks.
Right. So a few things, the plan that we have in place, again, requires masks so that you would have that. We are trying to eliminate lunch and have a grab and go option for lunch so that you wouldn't, so we would do an early release and have a grab and go option. So eating would not be an issue. And we are putting up barriers in classrooms because you will then have on your mask, and then so we will reduce the density. And the minimum is 3 feet. We're attempting to do as the greatest extent possible.
Okay.
Okay.
So with that, every day is going to be an early release.
Correct.
Okay.
So we will reduce every period to about 43 minutes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
My second part was that I was watching the board meeting workshop. I think it was sometime in the past week.
Did you see me?
Yeah. And the board members were talking a lot about the decision being made, you know, without anyone like actually really talking to each other.
Uh-huh.
Slightly related to that, how there's a lot of times where teachers are only really hearing these decisions being made for the students. I know this everything that happened with the board and deciding to open elementary schools, those could have been made for the elementary schools, which I get sending them back, but I don't know, still like, I know there's not a lot of people being communicated with
Yeah.
times, which I find pretty concerning, especially because teachers, and students are the ones in school, and it's basically all the informations are rumors.
Right. So I appreciate the question. We actually have had committees set up since last May that represent all a lot of different people from the community. We have our teachers on it. We have our community members. We have Board of Ed members on it. And one of the places where, and one of the reasons why we're having this session is that I did hear that there weren't students on those meetings. So I wanted to have you all have an opportunity to share your ideas. But my goal is always to listen to our community and making these decisions. They're very complicated decisions to make. I don't make them lightly. I pay attention to all sorts of health and safety professionals who guide me in making this decision. We're very lucky here in Stanford. I have access to head epidemiologists when I'm making these decisions. So they're in no way made lightly. I want you to know that. They're made in a very thoughtful manner. And one of the things that our Commissioner of Education decided is that the final decision would be the superintendents to make a determination of moving back and forth. And so I work with a large team of people in a district this size to help me make those decisions, including building principals, because I would never want to do that in isolation.
Okay.
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 But thank you so much for taking your time to speak with me today.
Thank you for letting me speak.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kate. Kate.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Kate.
So I also go to West Hill, and I know you said that every week emails were supposed to be sent out or phone calls to parents about contact tracing. I confirmed with my parents they have not gotten an email or a call in the past couple weeks about contact tracing. So
Mrs. Della Flora is on, and she works with Mr. Rinaldi. So maybe she can speak to that.
Yes, I believe it's going through School Messenger, but also on the school website, there's the weekly news from Mr. Rinaldi. I know that they're posting it there too in English and Spanish. But I will definitely take this back if families are not getting those through the school messenger system, but you can also check the school website.
okay, and then I took a poll of students in Stanford schools if they wanted to answer it about going back to school, and majority people had 82% of the people said they didn't feel comfortable, and most of them said they didn't feel comfortable because there was no option for hybrid students to go back to distance learning. So are we forcing students to stay in-person schooling even if we're all going 100% back?
No, we wouldn't force people to do that. We would help you to make a determination. In elementary, middle school, we're working with families who do not feel comfortable returning. I don't know if you would be surprised or not, at our elementary level, that returned today, we have less than a dozen students who have said that they wanted to not return to school. So as we develop the plan, we hope that people will see that it is a safe plan and they will opt to return to school, but we would not force anyone to come back to school if they didn't feel comfortable.
I also wanted to speak upon that majority of classes now with hybrid schedule, desks aren't being sanitized between classes, like things aren't being sanitized. So when there's 100%, there's more people in each classroom. Like, is there going to be a requirement to like have clean desks, clean seats? Because like that, you can still catch things and germs.
Yeah. So Kate, what we really encourage you to do, and this is guidance from the health department and the CDC, it's about good hand sanitizing, not about touching hard surfaces. So that's why we have hand sanitizer in all of the classrooms. So it's really important that we're encouraging people to stop at the restroom, wash their hands, and hand sanitize. It's not about the hard surfaces.
Few more things. So
Kate, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we have some other people waiting.
that's fine.
If you put your questions in the chat, I'll make sure we get back to you on that.
Kate, I wish I could spend more time talking to each of you.
I did send an email to you and the rest.
Okay, great.
So.
Okay.
It probably ended up with Mrs. Della Flora, though. They go to the associate superintendents.
Next up we have, thank you, Kate. Next up we have Julian.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Like the main thing I wanted to ask is why open the schools to full 100% now? Because it seems slightly risky because I'm from AIT and a lot of my classes currently, if we went to 100%, currently like in some of my classes, we aren't even 6 feet and it'd be I don't know if it would be like safe to do full 100%.
Yeah, we work with our local health department following guidelines from the CDC and the DPH to make this decision. We really have access to a lot of experts who are helping us make these decisions, making sure that our students are 3 feet apart, that they have access to barriers. So there are lots of things that are going to be in place so that everyone is safe. And we would never, health and safety has always been at the top of our list when making all of these decisions, and medical professionals are guiding us in making these decisions.
Okay. The reason why I said is because I've talked with some other students and even some teachers that say that they don't think we should go back to 100% right away.
Yeah, and that's why we have really transitioned in. We wanted to hear from you all tonight, and we have had opportunities for having lots of different committees to discuss these issues, but really it's our health professionals that are really guiding us at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for answering my questions.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming.
No problem. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up we have Jennifer. Jennifer, are you there? Let's see if I can. While we're waiting on that, I'll just read a question. One of the questions that is coming up is what will they do if classes are too crowded? There's too many kids to put into a classroom. What will happen if that occurs?
Mr. Menka, do you want to kind of talk about what you are thinking about at Stanford High?
Sure. So first, in regards of overcrowded, so when we had to go through the scheduling process to come up with Blue Day, Green Day, it was actually created so that no classroom is going to be over max capacity of 30 students, right? So blue had 15, green had 15. So when you collapse those two, it wouldn't exceed 30. Based on how the desks move back in and with the barriers that go back onto those desks and are affixed to those desks, we would hope to be able to have those collapsed sections be able to fit inside that classroom without any issues. If in the event that that is the case, what we're thinking about doing is providing either alternative spaces. Stanford High School specifically has, room 725, There are a couple other spaces as well, 101, that are larger spaces that would be available to have those sessions go in there. They'd be larger spaces to have our students and staff work in. I'm sure that we could find those places at AIT or West Hill as also. Yeah, I think I addressed the concern right there, but we don't have any of the classes that would exceed 30 if we collapsed. This is for the hybrid students to return. This is an accounting for bringing back the DTLA students, and also, we also could have reports run to find open spaces, open rooms that could be alternative spots for our staff to work in. So we'd be able to provide that to our teachers as well.
Thank you. Riley, are you on the line?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I am an out-of-district student at AITE, and I don't have any questions, but I thought I'd share an observation. So Joe Barlow High School in my town of Reading just went back full in person very recently. Last week, I want to say last Tuesday, they had to send 150 students home at once, and then they closed down completely again on the following Wednesday, the day after. So I think that this going back in person is inevitably going to cause lots of cases or exposures, and is going to lead to having to quarantine, and that will cause further disruption to our education, tons of anxiety, and zero consistency, which I think we need more consistency this year, not less. And so I think that going back full in person is not a smart decision. And I understand that you've been working really hard to come up with a plan, but I think that this will just be detrimental to student mental health and cause lots of inconsistency that I think we need more of right now. And we have a process that has been working. There have not been too many cases, specifically at the school that I go to, AITE. I haven't seen that many cases, and it's been working, and we feel safer right now. And I just think that it's important that we consider student mental health and safety in this.
Yeah. Riley, I really appreciate your statement. Know that we are considering all of those things. It is very complicated. Mental health is so important to us. We're hearing from families every day who are feeling like if they would like their students to have the option to return to school so that they can have that interaction 5 days a week, but it is complicated. And you brought up some major issues. The more students that are closer together, the more quarantining we will have to do if someone tests positive. That is a reality of this. And unfortunately, we have to make some really hard decisions. And that's why a final decision, you saw that we were able to make a decision for elementary, we're able to make a decision for middle school. We have not announced a decision for high school just for this reason. It's very complicated. And your school back home, that superintendent must right now be out of their mind trying to figure out what the next step is going to be. But just know that health and safety will always be at the forefront of our thinking. And just like the superintendent in your community pivoted and made a decision to bring the people, students home because that was the safest thing to do. And I'm sure their local health department was helping them make that decision. We would make similar decisions. So just know before we finalize any plan, it will be well vetted by our health department to make sure that we believe it's the safest thing to do. But I really appreciate you taking your time to share your ideas and sharing that information about your local school district.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Riley. And unfortunately, we're at the end of this session, but I have on the screen, if you did not have an opportunity to ask your question or speak, I did copy the Q&A, so we will try to respond to those if we can. And we just really appreciate your feedback. And please know if you think of something after today, please email your suggestions or your comments or your questions to the SPS reopening at stanfordct.gov.
I just want to take a minute to say thank you so much for our other panelists that joined me, but also thank you so much for the students who joined us. Actually, yours has been the largest session thus far. And so I see that it's really needed. And I would love more opportunities like this with us making decisions going forward. So I will note that this is something that Sharon, write this down. I'd like to do this in the future, longer sessions, because I like to talk. I maybe talk too much. I love it. Thank you so much, students. This was a lot of fun.